Thank you for joining us on this, our first session on hope. And I got to start by saying something that is probably just me. It probably hasn't occurred to you. Probably none of the rest of you feel this way, but I am so done with this pandemic. I mean, I really am. I'm done. I've had it. You know, the immediate adrenaline rush of fear, that's gone. Then that next stage of, let's suck it up and do this thing, man. But let's rock it. Not so much. I think we're tired. I'm tired. I'm weary. And again, I've got it so good. But I think even those of us who haven't lost a loved one to this disease, those of us who haven't gotten sick from it, we're still being impacted by it in a huge way. We don't feel good. We don't know what to feel. How are you supposed to feel in the middle of a pandemic? We've been handed a situation that we haven't had before that we don't know how to handle. And when I think about what is it really like right now, what is life right now like for people like us, it actually reminds me of that old comedy show, Whose Line Is It? Where these comedians are given these absurd pieces, like they're just given something and said, here, make something of this. Take this random thing that you've never seen before and make something of this. So I couldn't resist. Let's just take a little watch.
Bird's going in that direction. I'm going that way.
Fister, one moment, please. Fister, one moment, please. Fister, one moment.
I would like to return my pasta maker.
We're up here in Air 5. We're looking down upon the 101. Everything seems... Mind if I join you in the shower?
No, come on.
The doctor said it'll keep me from licking my stitches.
So then, I told Sashisha that she better shut her mouth.
That's right.
I will kill her.
So I told her if she was going to talk like that about me, that I was just going to leave. I would not take that.
I don't know why the giant picked this wine. It doesn't go with chicken at all. You're not the first, madam. We get squid stuck in vacuums every day. I guess Yogi didn't hear you say timber.
I just love those guys. I really do. I know it's dumb, but I just love it because I really think what they're going through is almost like what we're going through right now. I'm being handed by life these random pieces, like parts of my old life, these new regulations, things that I can't do, new things that are happening, old things that are lost. I'm being handed these like random pieces, and life is saying to me, here, make something of this. Make something out of this. Find some meaning in these broken pieces. And one of the reasons I love that show, though, is they take absurd things and then they find meaning in them. And of course, they just make us laugh. But here's the thing. I really think that your ability to laugh at the absurdity of life is a key sign of mental health. Because if we're not going to laugh, what are we going to do? Be bitter, be depressed, turn in, give up, be passive. And so I hope you enjoy those guys a little bit as much as I do, because I'm kind of thinking we might need to look at them every week. So here's the good news. I think there's a way to take the broken pieces of your life and make not something silly, make something meaningful and beautiful and hopeful out of it. And here's the really good news. Hope is not just wishful thinking. Hope is not sitting around for things that are out of your control to somehow magically get better. It turns out that hope is actually real. We're going to be looking at a book called Hope Rising, How the Science of Hope Can Change Your Life. That's one of the texts we'll be looking at as we turn to the scriptures each Sunday. And what these guys are saying is actually hope is a real thing. and it can be measured, and it can be learned. How's that for good news? That if you really believed that hope is real, that it's not just a wishful thinking, that there's actually a way of being in the world that actually builds hope into you, and that it can be known and measured, and it can even be learned, doesn't that very fact give you some hope? So, today's segment, our first in the series, is called Eeyore Was Wrong. If you've been a member of our church for very long, you know that I really think it really matters how you answer the question, is the glass half full or half empty? This primal question is not just about philosophy or your outlook on life. How you see things where you are standing today will actually change where you are standing tomorrow, because it will actually change the choices you make or fail to make, and thus change the trajectory of who you will become. So in this moment, in this week, do you feel a bit like old Eeyore, that old donkey in the Winnie the Pooh series? When you think about your own feelings right now, see how much you can relate to good old Eeyore.
Good morning, Pooh Bear.
If it is a good morning, which I doubt.
There now. Did I get your tail back on properly, Eeyore?
No matter. Most likely lose it again anyway.
Poor dear. You know, I may have just the thing. Up, up, up you go. There you are.
It's an awful nice tail, Kanga. Much nicer than the rest of me. It's not much of a tail, but I'm sort of attached to it. Not much of a house. Just right for not much of a donkey. Might take a day or two, but I'll find a new one. End of the road. Nothing to do. And no hope of things getting better. Sounds like Saturday night at my house.
So if you've been feeling a bit like Eeyore, this sermon series is for you. But if you're not, if you're doing really pretty good right now and you feel like you're flourishing, this series is still for you, because the things we're going to look at are going to help us not only go from no hope to some hope, but from some hope to more hope. So wherever you are in your life, I think these tools are going to be super helpful. So we got to begin at the beginning with brute honesty, where we are at right now. So, which one of these glasses best represents who you are? Now, of course, some of these are kind of really funny, but some of these are pretty accurate to the way people look at life. And you might think, how dare this guy claim that one way of looking at the glass is better than the others? But that's exactly what I want to do. I'm going to start this series by saying Eeyore, who I love, was wrong. Or at least choosing to be willing to live like Eeyore is a really bad idea. How can I say that? Some of the ways of looking at the glass you see up there are going to make it harder for you to believe in or turn into hope. Well, optimism and pessimism are not just two different ways of looking at the world. They generate different outcomes, different future yous, and therefore different futures for the world. When different ways of seeing the world can be proven to produce different results, you cannot claim that all views are created equal. They're different animals. As a simple example, the truth is, statistically speaking, a pessimist gives up sooner than an optimist. The pessimist tries something once and it doesn't work, and they say, see, it doesn't work. But an optimist, even if they're a fool, keeps trying multiple times to make something work. So simply from the statistics of trying more often, so for example, if there's a 1 out of 3 chance that something will work, The person who tries to do it 5 times is much more likely to hit success than the person who gives up after 1 try. So even if the optimist is a fool, they're more often successful than the pessimist. But as we're going to find out, hope is something even much, much bigger, much more important than optimism. So in their book, Hope Rising, the authors say this: hope is not simply an emotion. It is far more than a feeling. It is not a wish or even an expectation. Hope is about goals, willpower, and pathways. You can increase your hope score by intentional strategies. Rising hope is predictive of short-term and long-term positive outcomes in people's lives. Over 200 peer-reviewed studies on hope have shown that it is predictive of short-term and long-term positive outcomes in people's lives. They show that hope can actually be measured and tracked. Rising hope in a person has been shown statistically to help them do better in education, in work, in physical health, in mental health, in their relationships, and especially with recovery from trauma. In terms of recovery from trauma, hope is the single best predictor of well-being compared to any other measures of trauma recovery. And here's the thing: as we will see in coming weeks, hope can be learned. Now, so far, I haven't made a theological argument for you. In fact, this isn't a moral argument. This isn't a philosophical argument. I am making a totally utilitarian argument to begin, which is simply this: hope actually works. So this is the lowest shelf I can put the cookies on. I'm hoping that you are at least willing to give it a shot, because it's basically saying, like, even if you don't think it's real, even if you don't think it changes anything, it actually works. So wouldn't it be worth it to try and find out and see if it actually works? And here's the thing that really motivates me. Once you grow in hope, you'll be able to help other people grow in hope. This is one of those classic examples, when the airplane and the oxygen mask coming down, and they say, first put on your own oxygen mask before you turn and help someone else, because if you can't breathe, you're not going to be good for anything. You're not going to be able to help anybody for a long haul. The same is true with hope. If you develop and build hope in your life, you will then have the capacity to help other people grow in hope. So is the glass half empty or half full? Kerry Welsh puts it this way: if you want to, you can find 1,000,000 reasons to hate life and be angry at the world. Or, if you want to, you could find 1,000,000 reasons to love life and be happy. So choose wisely. This truth that life is such a mixed bag was so driven home to me this very day. I got back about an hour ago from doing a funeral for a dear friend, a great man, a guy that was my age. He died way too soon. This same day, this morning, I got an email from another friend who's been trying to get pregnant for 2 years and thought she never would. And her email told me that there's a little one on their way. Life and death, both at the same time. This life is a mixed bag. So you see, there's plenty of good reasons for both hope and despair. The question is, which one will you focus on? Which one will dominate you? Now, to begin with, there's lots of good reasons to despair. There's lots of good reasons to be bitter about the world and the state of the world at this moment. For example, think about racial injustice. Think about political division in our country and how outrageous you think the other side is. Think about climate change or those dolts who disagree with you on it. Think about the pandemic or those dolts who disagree with you on it. See, there's lots of good reasons. To paraphrase Jordan Peterson, you've got a lot of really good reasons to be bitter. You've got a lot of really good reasons to be angry and frustrated and despair. You do. But here's the problem. What happens when you actually give in to them? Things get even worse. He argues, and he's right, that when you give in to those things, even though you're justified, even though it's totally fair and appropriate, when you give in to those things get even worse. Now, this doesn't mean, oh, don't worry, be happy. It doesn't mean, wallpaper over the problems of the world and try and pretend everything's okay. We do have to actually take a good hard look down into the abyss. We have to be willing to see the horror that is there. But if you just keep on looking and looking and looking and you never take your gaze away, well, then by definition, you're not seeing reality. You're only seeing part of reality, because that is real, but it's not all of reality. So if you're spending all your time there, by definition, you're not seeing the full picture. So we're going to dig into what it means that Eeyore was wrong. And here's what I think. I mean, this might sound a little bit harsh, but if you're not willing to believe that hope is real and that hope can grow, if you're not even willing to explore the possibility, then something other than the truth and hope is what's motivating you. You see, I think Eeyore was wrong, and I also think that a guy that was real, a guy I like, was wrong. His name is Job, and his story is found in the Bible. And I just want to read a small section to you from this very long book. It's one of the oldest books in the whole Bible. And it deals with like the most profound questions of life, like why do bad things happen to good people? And here's what Job says. He is not afraid to confront God. He's not afraid to say, God, what the heck is going on? Why are you allowing this? And he's not afraid to ask hard questions. He's not afraid actually to even confront God and to make his plea before God. And so he's very honest about what he's going through. And this is what he says. This is chapter 7, starting in verse 5. My body is clothed with worms and scabs. My skin is broken and festering. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and they come to an end without hope. Remember, O God, that my life is but a breath. My eyes will never see happiness again. Now, his situation was terrible. He was full of grief because he had lost people he loved dearly. He had lost money and his savings, and he was in desperate straits financially. He was physically sick, tormented by illness. Life was miserable, and it was going by so fast, just day after day after day, spent doing nothing, spent for nothing, just more of the same, and spent without hope. And he realizes life is over so quickly, and he's probably late middle-aged. He realizes more than half his life is already over, and what does he have to show for it? So all this is true. And this is why I love Job. He's just so brutally honest. And everything he said in each line, is accurate. But then he goes a step too far. Then he makes a fatal mistake. He concludes, my eye will never again see good. He thinks he knows what the future holds, and he doesn't. In other words, he's saying, life will never get better. I am sure life will never get better. I know life will never get better. No, he does not know that. And you don't know what will happen in the future either. Did you see the pandemic coming? Well, if life is unpredictable, with unexpected bad things coming along, then it needs to be unpredictable with unexpected good things too. Otherwise, it wouldn't be unpredictable. So an honest evaluation is there's a lot of really bad things going on, but there's also a lot of really good things going on. Bad things might happen in the future, but good things might happen in the future too. The Bible is true to reality. It's true to the way life is actually experienced. So it covers the wide extremes. So on the one hand, we have Job, but on the other hand, we have 1 Peter. Listen to what 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 3 says. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And we're going to look into that kind of hope in detail in the weeks ahead. As we saw this spring, the guy who wrote 1 Peter knew a thing or two about suffering, and yet is sure that there's also this new thing, this real hope, both at the same time. And note, he implies that at one time he didn't have this hope, and now he does have this hope, which means you can go from having no hope to having hope. Our lives are found in the middle space between these two scriptures. In that middle space between those two very real mountains. So what do I think Job's situation was really like? What do I think my situation, your situation, is really like in the middle of this pandemic? Think about the fact that in Yosemite Park, at this very moment, this river is flowing. As you are watching this video, somewhere far away, this river is flowing. Think about that. It's always flowing, whether anyone is watching or not. In the middle of the night, in the complete darkness, in the middle of the day, when the sun is out and shining, the river is flowing. When the weather is terrible and there are storms and there's darkness and it seems like they will never go away and life will always be this way, the river is running. And on that magical, perfect spring day, when there are flowers gently dancing in the breeze, the river is flowing. All right, so what? So what about the river? Well, imagine the weather is how we experience life on any given day. Sometimes it's dark and nasty. Sometimes it's bright and beautiful. Sometimes we're in the shadows. Sometimes we're in the sunlight. But none of those days lasts forever. They're just chapters in the story. But the river flows through all of them. The weather affects how we feel about the place, how we experience it. But the river is always there, in the good days and the bad days, in the light and in the shadows. The river is the presence and the love of God. It is new every morning. It is present to every moment. It flows from the beginning of time, right past where you are standing today, up ahead of you into eternity. God is telling a story, and it is a story of hope, and this river is going somewhere. And so for this reason, we can have hope even in the middle of our grief and sorrow and the craziness of this world. People change, people learn, people grow. Just because my past is full of heartache does not mean that my future has to be. Now, I started by telling you that Job was wrong, but he wasn't wrong forever. Eventually, he saw the bigger picture. He was able to have hope again. He didn't get back all the stuff he lost. Those people who died never came back magically. But he did get new relationships, and he did get new opportunities, and he did get new ways to gain wealth. He lived forward. He wasn't controlled by the suffering and the trauma and the loss of the past. So being wrong is not a permanent condition. Sometimes we think that about like people who oppose us politically because we don't get it. We think they're evil. No, they're not evil incarnate. They might be wrong. And if they're wrong, that's not a permanent condition of your soul. So even in the darkest places, there is this hope. Listen to what Ephesians says. We are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. God has good works for you to do. Good works that he has already prepared in advance. They're already in the pipeline. They are upstream and they are coming your way. Eeyore was wrong. He is not useless. He is not worthless. The future is not full of only futility and failure. It's also full of possibilities, and there are things you really can do to contribute to the good of this world, things that God has already set up for you to step into. I get to play a part in the redemption story that God is telling. You get to play a part in the redemption that God is doing in this beautiful world. And so in the coming weeks, we're going to look at how we actually become more hopeful people, the actual steps and attitudes and behaviors and processes that can get us there. But I just wanted you to start today with this. If we can really grow in hope, if hope can be measured, if there really are things that you can change that increase the hope quota in your life, isn't that of itself a reason to hope? Lord willing, I'll see you here again next week. Amen.